Hey there, welcome back to Ask Amy. I have a really great question today, very common question from Tricia. Tricia says, Dear Amy, thank you so much for your podcast. I love it. I'm new to this understanding and would love to hear you talk about pleasant feelings. She says, Sydney Banks said, look for the feeling, and that opened up a lot for me. Can it be so simple? Also, when you talk about levels of consciousness from where we think, feel, and act, it makes so much sense. But when we look for that good, warm feeling, it seems too simple to be true, and then my thinking comes in. So let me just stop in the middle of your question, Tricia, and say that I love that. Like, it feels too simple. Can it really be this simple? It feels too good to be true. And then you see, and then my thinking comes in, and of course, complicates it and says it can't be this simple. So that's just great that you see that already. She says, I used to drink a lot and I stopped years ago because I realized what I had to do without needing any willpower. So I know how clarity is different from excitement. That's huge also. Clarity, the clarity that said, hey, this doesn't make sense. I'm not doing this anymore was so different than that feeling of excitement or willpower or it's just a different feeling. She says, but still, as an addict, I'm kind of trained to not trust myself. I get suspicious when I look for a good feeling because that's what got me into trouble in the first place. Also, I'm single and I date a lot and get myself into trouble. I tend to get very dramatic and impulsive. I guess some very cloudy state of consciousness. But here again, this very nice feeling is to get to, there's a very nice feeling to get to know someone. You get excited and things feel really good, but then it's also a very ego driven situation. I want you, I need you, I miss you, me. Yes. So, how do we learn to trust ourselves, to distinguish the excited from the wise voice? Is it just that when you know, you know? I love this question, Tricia. And again, I hear, um, as always, so much wisdom and understanding and kind of knowing this coming through in your question, as I do in almost everyone's question. And then it's just this thing of like, we know something makes sense, it feels right. And then our mind, just as you say, our mind comes in and thinks about it and thinks, do I really know? Can it really be that simple? And so that's just such a great, huge thing to see. So I think you're absolutely right that without thinking about it too much, there seems to be sort of a difference. Sometimes we just know stuff. Sometimes, just like with your drinking, sometimes you just say, I'm done. We don't even know that we know it. We just do it. Sometimes it just shows up through our behavior, right? It feels deep. It feels wise. We don't spend a ton of time thinking about it. We don't need to know why we know or what the reasons are. None of that looks important. We just know, and that's enough. And so yes, very often that's the case. Sometimes we don't know that clearly or deeply, and then like you say in your question, sometimes when we're thinking about, oh, follow a feeling or just do what feels right and all of that, it can be more heady. We can feel ourselves thinking about it a lot. And then it gets confusing. Like in the times when you said, like, well, I don't know, I'm dating this guy and I'm getting all emotional and that it feels good, but you know that that feeling is a little different than other feelings, which doesn't make it wrong or bad at all, but it's just good to kind of notice the feeling differences. Sometimes things are just really clear and we're just living from it, and other times it feels a little more heady. So I think that's a big thing to see. I think that yes, sometimes it is a case of you just know when you know. Also, everything you said in here is really wise, that often there is a sense of just a peaceful knowing, a quiet knowing, versus a very emotional, dramatic knowing. Usually, knowing maybe isn't so emotional and dramatic. Again, that doesn't mean your mind isn't in there being emotional and dramatic, but but our knowing kind of just is something we live. That's why you'll hear me say a lot, like, and I'm sure you listen to the podcast, that life lives us. That's my best way of kind of describing this difference exactly. So when it's our ego and we're like, oh, I think this is going to happen and I think this is good and I should follow that, you have a feeling of me and I and your ego and all the drama in there. But aside from that, Life is living us. I think I can't, that's why I love to talk about it that way, because it takes us out of the equation completely, which is awesome. We're not completely out because we're the ones being lived, but it takes our effort and our needing to know and our action, sets them way off to the side. Life lives you. And the way that life lives you is you do things that make sense naturally. You don't have to think about it. You just find yourself doing things and being lived and knowing things. So that's another good just kind of way to kind of see this distinction. And again, you're onto this. You say it right in the question. But consider that even when we're in our heads, even when we're all chasing a feeling and feeling all emotional or dramatic or anything, life's still living us. So it's not an either or. It's not that we need to always be in this wise, peaceful place at all. We're not. It's that life's living us either way. Life is living us all the time. And sometimes our mind has a lot to say about it, and other times our mind does not have so much to say about it. And I think that's really great to see that we're not at risk of life not living us. Life is going to live us, and the wisdom is there. It's in everything. It's guiding every single thing we do. It's just, it's more that it's good to know. So it's not that you have to pick one or the other. It's more that it's good to know you're always lived, you're always seeing new things, and sometimes your mind is in that more emotional, feeling excitement, me state. And that's just good to be onto. Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something to be kind of aware of and see. So, one other sort of little angle on this that I want to give you is sometimes, like, let's take your dating situation as an example. You say you get dramatic and impulsive, you get really excited, it's really fun, but then that's your mind and your ego in there and all of that, and it can look like, oh, this might lead me in a not good direction, and we get in this place where we want to understandably make the best choices we can make. We want life to be easy, and we just want to feel aligned and all of that. That's all so normal, so understandable. But sometimes where that takes us is being in a place where we think we need to figure it out ahead of time. And I don't know that your question's coming from here, but often a question like this is coming from there, where it's a person sitting here right now saying, okay, if I can figure out when it's life living me, or wisdom, or whatever we want to call it, versus when it's my ego living me, if I can figure that out ahead of time, I'll be good, because I'll just know what to listen to, what not to listen to. Everything will just work out. And I don't think it works that way. I think we do get curious about this. We do see more about how life's showing up, and again, what it feels like, all the stuff you're already seeing so much about. That all helps kind of deepen our grounding, helps us understand, helps us make wiser choices. But it's not about making the wisest choice right away so much as it's about knowing that we're just in life always doing the best we see to do, and it's all okay. We get feedback. You drink too much, you wake up one day and say, whoa, this isn't working for me. Perfect. Now, yes, we can look back and say, I wish I hadn't spent those years drinking so much, but anybody can do that about anything in their life. So I want you to see it less as about preventing bad stuff from happening or preventing suffering, than seeing that all we have to do is be in life, like in the flow of life. And yes, we will make turns that don't feel well, and we will get instant feedback. So we get better at reading the feedback, and we know the feedback is our suffering, right? When we're suffering or stuck, that's showing us, whoa, something's not quite going right here, So it gives us this opportunity to back up and just bounce right back, make a new choice, see something new, right back in the flow of life, always in the flow of life. So again, I don't know, Tricia, if that's beneath your question or not, like if that's kind of what's underneath your question or not. It's actually the subject of the podcast that went live today called Getting It Right, because I just see this all the time. See if we can set aside wanting to figure stuff out so we can do it right the first time. And let's just see that, wow, life gives us constant, endless do-overs. We are incredibly, incredibly resilient, and we're always learning. We're always seeing new things. It's so much easier that way. Then we become less afraid of messing up or getting it wrong. There's no need to figure it out ahead of time so much. And we just get to be in this flow of life. And so to use your relationship example, you're going to learn on the job. You're going to learn in real time in these relationships. And you'll see as you go through, you'll notice, wow, I'm getting that really needy feeling again. Let me back off. You already do. You said it in your question. So it's more about you kind of just noticing real time feedback and adjusting naturally than it is about figuring it out for out of context so that you can get it right from the get-go. So I hope that distinction makes sense, and I hope what I shared makes sense. Like, it is a question many times of you just know it when you know it. And when you don't know it, it's okay. When you don't know it, you're just like all of us. We don't know it a lot of the times. Is this excitement? Is this wisdom? But you do the best you can, and it doesn't really matter. You're resilient. You bounce back. You see something new. And so life gets really easy in this way. We're just always doing the best we can. We don't need to worry about it so much. I hope you can feel the ease and the flow in that way of living, because it's really awesome, and I can tell you're headed there. You're there already. So thank you so much for sending this question. I know it'll be helpful to others because it's a big topic that shows up for people in a lot of different areas of life. So yeah, thanks for sending it. So send your questions, everyone, to AskAmy at thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. And I'll be back here every Monday to speak to them. Have a great week, everyone.